Despite having generally honorable intentions, religious organizations are not immune from the challenges that come along with construction and building. This list looks at 10 religious development projects that were derailed by any number of reasons, from financial to engineering to community backlash. First up at number 10, we have the Perfecting Church in Detroit, Michigan. It was led by Grammy-winning gospel singer Marvin Winans and has sat stalled for nearly 2 decades. Originally envisioned as a grand $60 million complex, with the centerpiece being a 4,200-seat auditorium, but it would also include an administrative building, parking facilities, and even some condos. This project has faced numerous setbacks since construction began in 2005. In 2023, the city of Detroit filed a lawsuit against the Perfecting Church, alleging that the site was blighted and out of compliance. The parties reached a resolution June 2023, which potentially would allow construction to resume under very specific conditions. The church is now seeking approval for a revised plan with a downsized overall project scope. Bishop Winans has expressed optimism about moving forward. However, there's still a significant amount of work that needs to be done before the facility can open. Next up, at number 9, we have God's Ark of Safety. In the mid-1970s, a pastor at a church in western Maryland decided to build a large replica of Noah's Ark along I-68. On Easter 1976, construction began with the pouring of 3,000 tons of concrete. The plans called for the structure to be roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall. With the project being funded by donated money and time, it was not a surprise that progress was slow and moved along at an inconsistent pace. In the late 1990s, the project got a boost when a large steel frame was added to one section of the ark, but in the decades since, little progress has been made. The church involved in the building process still hopes to complete the ark, although there's no current timeline for when that's expected to happen. On to number 8, we have the Harvest Life Changers Church project in Woodbridge, Virginia. It's been stalled for about a decade now and has faced numerous challenges since breaking ground in 2013. Originally envisioned as a $50 million, 204,000 square foot megachurch, the project has encountered financial hurdles and construction delays along the way. The church's ambitious plans include a 3,000-seat sanctuary, community outreach center, children's area, marketplace, and event spaces. Despite the setbacks, church leaders remain optimistic about completing the project, although right now it looks like the complex may open in phases rather than all at once. Construction has been slow since the very beginning, when major geotechnical and dirt work was required to get the site ready for building. By 2020, most of the exterior walls were complete. However, the project faced additional setbacks when its lender went out of business, as well as several pandemic-related delays. Recently, the church has resumed work on windows and doors and is seeking new financing to complete the project. On to number 7, we have Heritage Park USA. Originally opened in 1978, Heritage USA was a Christian-themed amusement park and resort in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Televangelist Jim Bakker was the driving force behind this project. Upon opening, the park was actually a major success, seeing an average of 6 million visitors per year. This made it the third most visited amusement park in the U.S. after only Disney World and Disneyland. However, issues began to mount in the mid-1980s when Bakker was arrested, and around the same time, attendance at the park began to fall. This led to a change in leadership to Jerry Falwell. Shortly after, the park lost its tax-exempt status, which devastated the park financially, leading to Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The final nail in the coffin for the park came in 1989 when Hurricane Hugo came roaring through, damaged many of the park's buildings and attractions. In the years since, there's been efforts made to reimagine and rebuild the site. Some of these efforts have been successful, while others haven't been as successful. Much of the old park has been demolished, including the park's well-known castle, but some things still remain. A large 30-story derelict tower still sits on the site, a reminder of the massive scale that the park used to be. Now down to number 6, we have the Ground Zero Mosque. Controversy erupted in 2010 over plans to build an Islamic community center and mosque 2 to 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan. The project, initially called Cordoba House, was later renamed Park 51, was intended to be a 13-story cultural center including prayer spaces, auditoriums, and recreational facilities. Supporters viewed it as an opportunity to promote interfaith understanding, while opponents argued it was insensitive to build an Islamic center so close to the site of the 9/11 attacks. The controversy sparked a nationwide debate about religious freedom and the appropriate use of land near Ground Zero. Ultimately, due to funding issues and continued controversy, the original plans were abandoned. The developer instead decided to build a condominium tower with units selling for between $1 and $40 million. This development did include a small museum dedicated to Islam. At number 5, we have the Majesty building, better known as the I-4 eyesore. It's an 18-story building near Orlando, Florida. The developer behind this project was a televangelist who envisioned the building as his independent TV station's office and studios. Funding was handled for this project a little different than the typical construction project, as the plan from the start was to build the building without any debt, but instead just rely on financing from partners and donors. Not surprisingly, this is an inconsistent way to raise money. As the construction timeline dragged on, costs have skyrocketed, which is making the project increasingly challenging to finance. This led to a partially completed shell of a building sitting untouched for almost a decade. Construction restarted in 2018, and completion was said to be 8 to 12 months away, but almost 6 years later, it's still not finished. At number 4, we have the Palace of the Golden Orb in Houston, Texas. Kwai Fong Wang, a leader of a Taoist organization, had grand plans when they purchased 11 acres of land in the Houston, Texas suburbs. The sprawling complex would have a dramatic palace as its centerpiece. The Palace of the Golden Orb featured a 4-story golden sphere on top of it. Future plans called for the project to have a number of other buildings on the complex, including residential and retail facilities. Construction started in 1999, shortly after the land was purchased, and steady progress was made until 2001. In 2001, the leader of the organization deported after they were unable to establish permanent residency in the United States. Once that happened, construction came to an abrupt halt. In the decades since, little has changed on site. The building's begun to deteriorate to some degree, but still stands as a unique piece of history in an otherwise unremarkable Houston suburb. Around 1970, televangelist Rex Humbard laid out plans for a massive TV broadcast tower that would also be outfitted with a rotating restaurant on top. He saw the tower as a project that could both expand the broadcast reach of his TV station and to make the complex in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, a tourist destination. Construction on the project began in 1971, and about 550 feet of the 750-foot tower were built. But in a shocking turn of events that no one could have possibly predicted, Rex Humbard's financial situation began to deteriorate. Who could have possibly imagined that a rotating restaurant in a northeast Ohio town may not be the wisest financial investment? These mounting financial troubles, combined with Rex Humbard's new interest in spreading his ministry to South America, led the project to being put on hold. When the project was put on hold, the tower was approximately 2/3 of its final height. It still stands today and was bought in 1989 for $30,000 for use as a communications tower. It's not open to the public, but it does attract attention for being the tallest structure in Summit County, Ohio. After receiving what he described as a divine message, a man in Indonesia began work on an unusual religious facility. This non-denominational church would forego more traditional architectural features like steeples and intricate stonework and opted for a more original design, that of a large dove. The structure of the project was built during the 1990s. During the latter part of the decade, the church opened briefly and was open to all religions. The building supported several charitable causes, including rehab and juvenile outreach. Unfortunately, though, despite all the honorable work that the church was trying to do, the money ran out around the year 2000. At this point, the partially completed building fell into disrepair as the jungle rains took their toll on the structure. In a surprising and awesome twist of fate, the church has seen a resurgence in recent years. Its unusual design has made it a tourist destination and social media favorite, and even houses a cafe for hungry tourists today. Before I get to number 1, I have an honorable mention. This one I wasn't able to find much information about, so if anybody knows anything about it, let me know. But From the information I could gather, it's a Muslim youth center near Columbus, Ohio. It started like 2015, 2016 timeframe. They built the stair towers and they did some foundation work, but nothing's really happened since then. So if you're from Columbus and you know what's going on with this project, let me know. And finally, we've made it to number 1, the Abundant Life building in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's one of the most unusual buildings in the city, and it was built to be the headquarters for televangelist Oral Roberts. The bizarre design featured no windows and diamond texturing along much of the building. Rising 7 stories high, it was built in the 1950s to house the rapidly growing Oral Roberts Ministries. The organization only spent a short time there before moving their headquarters to Oral Roberts University the following decade. During the 1970s, the building started to see less and less use. Finally, around 1980, the building was abandoned completely. For the next 4 decades, the building has fallen further and further into disrepair. In recent years, renovations have begun on the building. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing that. New videos out every Friday.